Hello, welcome to the Sisyphus complex solution. This is episode 178 and it's called the Janus effect. Janus, one of the two. Don't really care that much. As per usual, the reason for the title will become self-evident, and you'll know that because I am going to be covering two organisations that are underneath the MOD this week. And so let's start off with the financials of the first one that I'll be looking at. If it'll change, there we go. Right, having gone from last week where we did the Army Museum, now we're going to be going into the Royal Navy Museum this week. And so the benchmark year of 2019 to 2020 sees a contribution of 2.25 million, average salary of around 18k, and cost of employment at 40%. There does seem to be some fluctuation of the employees, but I suspect the low end of the salary range is responsible for a potentially a heavy turnover. This is obviously being dealt with through a sort of a 5-year gradual increase, resulting in 28%. But you know, I mean, I suppose I would guarantee that not many have had that in the private sector. So yeah, there's a little bit of that, I suppose, but I can't really bemoan that too much, considering this is from an exceptionally low base, and it's still nowhere near the national average. So there are things about this that I kind of have my suspicions around, but this will all come to the fore as we're going forward. Now, I think the net contribution variances do tend to dictate that they do seem to have a bit of a ceiling in terms of what they can actually achieve. And at I think at 2025 they probably hit that peak. But once again, you know, there's no real sign of austerity as such, which does seem really rather odd overall, considering that 2 of these years were based on the period where the entire country was shut down, and you know, Boris decided to go on his economic destruction spree. But more considerations around that sort of thing as we go forward, because this the Navy side of things, yeah, there's some interesting stuff here and that, but let's carry on for the moment. Right, again, because of in terms of who the National Royal Navy Museum is, obviously, you know, we are dealing with the blindingly obvious, in so much as it is about a group of museums. The main point really being is that it is museums, so plural, as in there's 5 of them to be exact. Though from the descriptions, I'm not entirely sure that where they've also got sort of demonstration ships in harbour in the likes of Belfast and Hartlepool, I'm not entirely sure if those are additional sites or not, but it doesn't really matter that much. What I can say is that this means that the level of revenues that they produce as a group, in terms of from visitors, that's coming in at around about 20 million. I'm not entirely sure that it's that good. Oh, sorry, the overall revenue is around 20 million, and only a third of that comes from the visitors. The rest of it is based on grants, really. I suppose you can look further into these museums for yourself if you want to find out more about it. But what does seem notable from the website is quite a different sort of different promotional approach, shall we say. Suffice to say that despite the forced inclusion in their more recent annual reports around all of that die nonsense, it seems quite apparent and I don't think it takes a great deal of mental gymnastics to figure this one out either, but within their promotional material, certain demographics tend not to really appear too much on account of the fact that those certain demographics aren't really well known for going near the water too much. So the materials that are used here are very much focused on the more indigenous side of things, shall we say. On that basis alone, I would hold them in high esteem. So there is that, and it probably explains the very low base in terms of the average wage, because, well, I'll go into it a little bit more on that, because I mean, if we compare it with the army from last week, and then I'll be going into another one directly afterwards, there is a very distinct difference. What the promotional material is, who it is that they're targeting, and then what the salary is. Quite a wide scope of difference. But when I consider the overall revenue stream that they are achieving and what they could achieve, I suppose we can have a quick look at the from the latest figures that are available from them. I suppose in some ways the numbers of visitors at least are relatively good, so they're getting into this 847,000, and I suspect that the main method of any kind of increase would be from the foreign tourist market, really. But considering where each of these museums are going to be located, there's not really much that they can do about that themselves. You know, something to be able to drive significant change and have people from different countries coming to visit them. I mean, it's not as if they can improve the train routes from London to Portsmouth, for example. But the one criticism that I would have, if I'm going to make any kind of criticism around these guys, is that when I do take a look at the when I do run a check in the financial reports, and I do see that this the ticket sales are around 7 million. That would mean that the average price, based on this number of visitors, would be just under £8.50, which, depending on what it is that you're going to see, and that you might think, well, you know, that's not too bad. But when you actually look at the ticket prices that they have, well, you've got kids coming in at a cost of £26 just for a single attraction, and then the adults at 36, and then that goes up a couple of scales, and that for the kids to become £36, and I think that includes like 3 attractions, and then to do whatever it is that you want, and then the adults at £51. So just from those numbers alone, I don't really understand how this number of visitors equates to 7 million. Something's not quite right there. I mean, even the lowest rates and that are still higher than what that would average out at. So perhaps there's some sort of deals that are done for school visits, for example. Maybe those make up quite large numbers, and the deals that are done there and that are at a much lower rate, because obviously if it's for school kids. I don't know. I don't know what the explanation is for that, but I'm sure just having a look at the books and that, and going to pay a visit, and that would be able to get the information direct, would be able to give at least some sort of an answer. But that would be the only real kind of criticism that I've got on the face of it. So effectively, there's not really much else that I need to say about the Royal Navy Museum. Overall, I would say one of the rare good spots, just as an initial perspective. So, the other side of the face. And here we get into the Royal Air Force Museum. And I do have a particular point of interest with this one. Well, I've got a couple, but there's one in particular when it comes down to this specific page around their finances. So if I look at the benchmark period of 2019 to 2020, we've got a net burden of 1.25 million. An average salary of 29k. Think about that compared to the Navy boys. Then we've got the cost of employment at 33%. So those are the benchmark year numbers. Now, over the 5 years, we can see that this particular couple of museums, this is, in some ways, I suppose it's kind of reflective of what you would have actually expected, because the first 3 years are the taxpayer burden, and that's because of the damage done by the fake conservatives that decided to go full communist and try to destroy the country. Then you get the latter 2 years showing some sort of comeback, and then having a net contribution. So that does then lead into the considerations around the sort of the impact to the employees between the benchmark year of 2020 to 2021, where the average salary dropped by 0.24%. That becomes something that is relevant, because what's interesting is that for the first time we have an entity that has actually published their annual report for the subsequent year. So the first year under Labour. So we've got an annual report for the 2024 to 25 period. So, oh look, is that austerity? Some difficulty going on here? The operating costs haven't dropped. Not a shocker, is it? But they are back straight into a taxpayer burden position, because the operating costs have increased. But perhaps more importantly, considering once again Labour, the costs of the salary have reduced in real terms, and that's resulted in average salaries dropping by 4%. Once again, keep in mind that during the worst period, where nobody was allowed to go anywhere, the salary dropped by 0.24%. So in the 2020-2021 period. Under Labour, it drops by 4% in the first year. So under Labour, costs have gone up, unable to break even at least, and pay goes down. Naturally, I'll be watching out for any and all other reports that start to see the light of day, because I'm going to be paying attention to see if this does become a pattern, because I think we can probably expect some level of pattern to take place on this, because it is basically what happens under morons. This is what you get from Fabian socialists and communists. Having said that, could this also be a case of you get what you deserve? Well, for those people that vote for this sort of shit, then yeah. But let's go into their blurb. So this is the main part that you'll see on their websites and that, in terms of what they're supposed to be about. Again, obviously it's museums, but they've only got 2 locations. I already know that there are plenty of other RAF related museums. There's literally one down the road, Manston, and they could expand on this, but never mind. I suspect there is a bit of an element of because it is the links to the RAF. You've got an element of liberal confusion that's going to be taking place here. And when I say liberal, I do mean Fabian socialist and communist. Um, they're going to struggle a little bit here now because their London location is placed in a white minority. Sorry, yeah, a white minority place because the whites only make up 26.3% of the residents of where the London Museum is placed. But then you've got the polar opposite in their West Midlands location, because that's in Cosford, which is 98% white. Generally quite a rare occasion when it comes down to the West Midlands, but that's going to cause them a certain amount of confusion as to what they're supposed to be doing, and you'll start to understand why shortly. And it is an important matter, really, because frankly, the kind of intro that they have about themselves is, first and foremost, what you can see on the screen here, and it is generally quite pitiful. But then you do get to understand why they have this pitiful introduction and then this confusion based off of their blatant ideology, because you get to see these additional areas of prominence on the website. Not really anything to do with RAF, history, museum, or anything like that. I'm not entirely sure how many fat black families have got something to do with the RAF. You know that they desperately wanted to put another brown face in the die section and that, but they decided to go with dementia instead because, yeah, I'm sure that lots of dementia people really got something to do with this. And then, of course, you've got your climate change. All the usual talking points and all the kind of promotions that you come to expect now from anything that is based around the RAF. So just as a reminder as to why the RAF is a problem. And this is a wider RAF problem, not focused just on the museums. But if you remember, the RAF are now unaccountably racist towards white men. The only person that ended up losing their job from the RAF being discriminatory against white men was the person that refused to be racist. All of the actual racists, not a problem. So my sympathies really go toward anyone in the RAF that is remembering the old days of what the RAF used to be. But in terms of the people that are in the RAF now, and based off of what I've just seen from that museum under Labour, my sympathies about you losing pay is basically non-existent. If anything, I'd say that the guys in the Navy should take half of your salary to add to their low pay, because they are grossly underpaid in comparison, aren't they? The Navy would probably be somewhere where I think if there is going to be any shift towards assisting in these museums reaching some kind of financial contribution, then the Navy side should be the focus of our support on this basis. But just in case, again, if there's anybody out there that thinks that, you know, yeah, but this is a couple of years ago, it was a small thing, it was a mistake. This kind of shit has consequences. And so, literally just from yesterday, this is what you get a result of the RAF being racist towards the indigenous white population. This is what happens when you show hatred towards your own people. Because now the RAF is going to be dependent on a communist, an Indian communist. So won't this be fun for anybody that is in the unfortunate position of made the daft career choice to go and give any consideration towards the RAF? Because you get in the plane and what you're going to get is, have you decided to turn it on and off yet? Bloody bastard. That's what you're going to be getting when you're in a plane now. What the fucking hell are these people thinking? Absolute sheer bloody insanity. This is infuriating. In case you didn't notice. You've lost the fucking RAF. Well done, you. Fucking retards. That'll do for that. Adding these two museums into the mix means that we've got a slight increase again to the contribution status, but that is, of course, of no thanks whatsoever to the racists at the RAF that are now becoming Indian communists. Well done, you. Policy side of things, I have to put both in review and reform, whereby the Navy boys would be based on the check of the visitor to revenue figures, because that just does seem a little bit odd. But then, frankly, consideration would be taken towards whether they are being fairly paid, because it doesn't seem so. And if we're concerned about making sure that the books get levelled up properly, just take the money from the racists from the RAF. Because that is where the real review and reform would take place. I know this is just museum at the moment and it's preparation for what's to come, because I will be looking at the RAF. But my God, every single one of these ideologues would be gone. Every single bloody one of them. All of those self-loathing, middle-class leftist retards would be shown out the door with zero added cost to the taxpayer. Oh, you think getting fired means that you're entitled to 6 years' pay and a pension and all the rest? No, you wouldn't get a fucking penny. Nothing. If anything, you'd get a bill. You bastards. Absolutely no way in hell would I enable anything that will allow them to be compensated for their dismissal. They'd be out the fucking door. You do not destroy our military, you dumb fucks. Short episode, because I'm not going to do more than 2, and that one I'm doing it on this basis, but irritating doesn't come close. And then it also gives me a moment to talk about this week's irritant, because there's literally always something to get irritated about. The moment that you think, well, surely this week we might not have anything to piss us off, but oh yes, we've got to have it. Most of it, and that has actually been the bullshit around the finances and that, and the fact that taxes are going to go up again. My car tax, you can kiss your ass for that one. I ain't fucking paying that. But then we've had the more recent thing, and that's kicked off because you've got the banning. Ban the Jews from turning up to the football. And of course it had to be bloody Aston Villa, didn't it? It just had to be Aston Villa. It does become increasingly difficult to support Aston Villa. I know, I'm sure that they can turn around and say, no, this wasn't our fault. it seems like every time that there's any kind of political incursion into football, Aston Villa has to be at the forefront of it. When they came out of lockdown, and the first thing, it was the first game that appeared was Aston Villa, and then they took the fucking knee for the commies of BLM. There's a reason why I haven't spent a penny on Aston Villa since then. I don't even watch the games. I don't care anymore, really. And now they had to be the ones for this. And it's all based off a bunch of jihadis that are now somehow in our House of Parliament, making sure that the police understand that if any Israelis turned up to watch a football game, oh, the jihadi crowds would come out and fucking have a go. So for the safety of the public, the Israelis should not be allowed to come and watch a football game. That's called a terrorist threat. It's as simple as that. Villa Park is obviously located, I mean, seriously, fellas, you really, if you've ever thought about doing something with your stadium, maybe picking it up and plonking it somewhere that isn't over 70% Muslim might be an idea. Just a thought. But here's the thing with it. I've kept on saying time and again before, for a long time now, that the Muslims are the ones that are being set up. They are being set up as the gullible idiot to really let the streets run red. And they will lose, and lose badly. I know they like to think that they're all getting their way at the moment, but no, they are going to lose, and lose badly. But they are being set up to let that violence take place so that the jackboot can get put down. Because just understand this. Again, I have to keep repeating myself over this. All of you Muslims out there that seem to think that you're making headway and oh, suddenly and that the UK is going to become a Muslim country. If you honestly think that the Germans in the palaces and the Rothschilds in the banks are going to hand the keys over to you, you are truly fucking retarded. It's not going to happen. You are being set up to be the instigator for them to turn around and go, wasn't me, now we're going to put the jackboot down. They're the ones that are going out and bombing your country to send you here, to make you kick off here so that we kick off, and then they put the jackboot down. In comes your mass surveillance and your fucking CCP state. And you dumb bastards are playing your part. Just as expected. Because you're too fucking thick to know when you're getting used. If they had any brains whatsoever, they would understand that the way to solve all of this is that we finally do get to take our country back. We do stop the retards from going out and bombing every Middle Eastern country that you have colonised. Be clear about that one. And then we can send you all back on your merry fucking way under the assurance that we're not going to be going out and bombing you anymore. You can go out and fuck your little boys under the sand dunes as to your heart's content. We won't go near you. You'll have your little shithole all to yourself and you can carry on being your cavemen there. But you ain't fucking doing it here. Every single one of your little mosques and all the rest of it, it would be gone out. But like I say, you'd be absolutely clear. If you've got any problems in your colonies, that would be of your own making. When you get all of your Islamic lunatics going around just shooting everybody, doing a genocide like Hamas is doing right now, aren't they? When that happens to you, that's your lot. That's your fault. That's down to you. But understand that when you're doing what you're doing in this country, you are being set up. And as much as I would love to turn around and say, all of us Brits, we should just understand that we're being set up as well. Because we're going to be the ones that actually do take to the streets and end your problem. We've got no choice. We've got no choice in the matter. You're not taking over our fucking land. No, so I mean, they won't allow it one way or the other, but we need to make damn sure that it doesn't get to the extent and the levels that they would be prepared to allow. Us taking back our country means us taking back our house as well, our House of Parliament, and getting rid of these communist fucking retards and all of these fucking foreigners. And I'm not just talking about the Muslims there. I'm talking about all these European ideologue wankers as well. Because that's where all of this ideology comes from. You got your Muslim lot, yep, that's your fucking desert war bloody ideology. Not interested in that. But the real ideology that needs rooting out is the European ideology. The one that has spent over 1,000 years attacking these islands. Where they fail, and then they fail again, and then they fail again. And now they're trying to do it through the back door. No. You can take your European socialism and communism and shove it straight up your arse. It doesn't fucking sit well in this country. We're not having it. So you Muslim boys, when you stop hiding behind your women or just walking through the streets trying to be brave and that when you know there's nobody actually in front of you, because I've seen what you do. Whenever there is actually a crowd that you might actually come up against, you push the women to the front because you're big brave boys, aren't you? We've seen you're exactly the same as how Hamas operate. You'll stick the women and the children in the front because you're so brave. Take your cowardly arses and fuck off. That evening at Villa Park, I don't think you quite understand what's coming. But you're gonna. You're gonna be so fucking stupid that you'll have your community leaders, you know, those ones that are going to get their 30 pieces of silver and then fuck off and not be anywhere near anything. They'll shove you, a bit like you with the chucking the women at the front. That's what they do to you. They're the big brave boys. It'll be a bit like with the Hamas stuff and that, where they're all sat in fucking Qatar. Don't give a shit how many people are getting killed because they're sat on their fat asses getting rich in Qatar. And you'll have fuckers like these jihadi MPs that are going to cause this kind of problem with their community leaders. They'll be nowhere near it. They'll just be sitting in the background getting ready to cry. Pretend cry. As the hand goes out the back and that to get their next fucking instalment. You think they give a shit about you? You don't know much about your own fucking ideology, do you? Stupid, stupid, stupid people. All over the place. Really fucking stupid. You will learn. One way or the other, you will learn. Because this shit isn't going to fly for much fucking longer. And I suppose that'll do for this week's happy instalment. The timing this week that of me putting out that code of conduct video on the Moirai appropriation, ended up being absolutely perfect. Work to fucking treat that. Let's see that Daniel Greenberg understand what code of conduct means now. Because it's his place to hold every single one of those jihadi MPs to account. And he needs to fucking do it. And all of the Israeli community leaders, get on his case. No more ignoring the 7 principles in public life. No more ignoring any of it. Hold these buggers to account. On that cheery note, see you next week. Bye bye.